This is the case of State versus Dylan Roof. Mr. Roof is charged with 9 counts of murder and 1 count of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. Before we go into the bond process, I would like to ask, are there any members, or is there a representative of any of the family that would be here that wish to make a statement before this court before I post or set the bond?
I just want everybody to know, to you, I forgive you. You took something very precious away from me. I would never talk to her ever again. I would never be able to hold her again. But I forgive you. And have mercy on your soul. You hurt me. You hurt a lot of people. But God forgive you. And I forgive you.
So how is it possible that a person that you've never met before could come and kill one of your family members or friends, and the first thing that you say to them is, I forgive you? And we see this a lot with individuals doing harm to other people, and the victims or the friends of the victims actually coming out and saying, I forgive you. And we see this a lot in the black community. But what we're going to do now is see where this mindset comes from. Let's turn to Matthew 5 verse 43. It says, Ye have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. So this passage is obviously telling you that you need to love your enemies. And it does not say that this enemy right here is the enemy of your brethren. But even if it was, we're going to see that this is still not how we're supposed to be treating the enemy of our brethren. And right now, we're going to let the Old Testament answer the question of whether or not we should love our enemies. So let's go to Exodus 15 verse 1. Exodus 15 verse 1. Alright, Exodus 15 verse 1. It says, Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto Yahuwah, and spake, saying, I will sing unto Yahuwah, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. So who is this horse and rider that Yahuwah threw into the sea? Let's go to verse 4. It says, Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains also are drowned in the Red Sea. So this is where the Most High is delivering the Israelites from the Egyptians. And the Israelites are rejoicing because of this. Let's keep reading. The depths have covered them. They sank into the bottom as a stone. Thy right hand, O Yahuwah, is become glorious in power. Thy right hand, O Yahuwah, hath dashed in pieces the enemy. So the Israelites, they are actually rejoicing that the Most High destroyed their enemies. They're not, feeling sorry for them and everything. They're rejoicing that the Most High destroyed their enemies. And that is the true spirit of the Israelites. Let's continue on. We're going to go to Deuteronomy 33 verse 27. Deuteronomy 33 verse 27. It says, The eternal Elohim is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. And he shall thrust out the enemy from before thee, and shall say, Destroy them. So the Most High, he actually has an anti-enemy spirit. So if he is against our enemies, we should also be against our enemies, right? So let's keep going. We're going to go to Joshua chapter 10 and verse 12. Joshua 10 and verse 12. It says, Then spake Joshua to Yahuwah in the day when Yahuwah delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hastened not to go down about a whole day. So right here, the the Israelites, they were warring against the Amorites, which were their enemies. And the Most High even allowed a supernatural event to occur, which was the sun and the moon staying still, so that the Israelites could destroy their enemies. And also says that Yahuwah delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. So let's keep reading. We're going to go to verse 18. It says, "And Joshua said, roll great stones upon the mouth of the cave, and set men by it for to keep them. And stay ye not, but pursue after your enemies, and smite the hindmost of them. Suffer them not to enter into their cities, for Yahuwah your Elohim hath delivered them into your hand." So Joshua is commanding the Israelites to destroy their enemies, because he's saying Yahuwah delivered them into your hand. So the Israelites, in a time of war, they're not trying to forgive these people or do good to these people that are trying to kill them. They are trying to actually kill these people. They're trying to destroy their enemies. And anyone in their right mind, would not basically do good to someone who's trying to kill you. Let's say someone broke into your house with a gun. You're not going to go and try to do good to that person. You're going to try to defend yourself. Alright? So let's continue on. We're going to go to Psalms 54 verse 1. Psalms 54 verse 1. And we're going to see how David felt about his enemies. Psalms 54 verse 1. It says, "Save me, O Elohim, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength. Hear my prayer, O Elohim. Give ear to the words of my mouth." So David has a prayer here. Let's see what he's saying. "For strangers are risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. They have not set Elohim before them." Selah. "Behold, Elohim is mine helper. The master is with them that uphold my soul. He shall reward evil unto mine enemies. Cut them off in thy truth." So David, which was a man after the Most High's heart, he's not forgiving his enemies. He's not praying for his enemies. He's actually saying that the Most High will kill them, and he wants the Most High to destroy them. Let's keep reading about how David feels about his enemies. Let's go to Psalms 139 verse 19. Psalms 139 and 19. It says, "Surely thou wilt slay the wicked, O Elohim. Depart from me, therefore, ye bloody men. For they speak against thee wickedly, and thine enemies take thy name in vain. Do not I hate them, O Yahuwah, that hate thee? And am not I grieved with those that rise up against thee? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them mine enemies." So again, David, he's a man after the Most High's heart. And notice how he says he hates the enemies of the Most High. And this is a righteous hatred, because he says he hates him with the perfect hatred. But this is opposite to what it says in Matthew, where it basically says that you should be loving your enemies. Right here, David's not doing that. He is saying that he actually hates his enemies. So let's go to the next verse. Let's go to Psalms 143 verse 11. Psalms 143 verse 11. It says, "Quicken me, O Yahuwah, for thy name's sake, for thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul out of trouble. And of thy mercy cut off mine enemies, and destroy all them that afflict my soul, for I am thy servant." So there it is again. Instead of David forgiving his enemies, he's actually asking the Most High to cut them off. And he's not praying for them like what it says for you to do in Matthew 5. He's not praying for them, but he's praying against them, because he wants them to be cut off. So let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 18 verse 1. It says, "Now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor and abundance, and joined affinity with Ahab." So he joined affinity with Ahab. He liked Ahab and everything. He was cool with Ahab. And let's see how the Most High reacted to that. Let's go to let's actually go to 2 Chronicles 19 and verse 1. 2 Chronicles 19 verse 1. It says, And Jehoshaphat the king of Judah returned to his house in peace to Jerusalem. And Jehu the son of Hananiah the seer went out to meet him, and said to the king Jehoshaphat, Shouldest thou help the ungodly, and love them that hate Yahuwah? Therefore is wrath upon thee from before Yahuwah. So the Most High's wrath actually came upon Jehoshaphat because he was a friend of a person that actually hated Yahuwah. So, if that person hated Yahuwah, he was the enemy of Yahuwah, right? So, because he was actually friends with an enemy of Yahuwah, again, the wrath of Yahuwah came upon him. So, the Most High does not want you to love your enemies or do good to your enemies. And what we're going to do now is actually go into the Apocrypha, and we're going to turn to 2 Maccabees chapter 1. We're going to go to verse 23. 2 Maccabees 1 verse 23. It says, And the priest made a prayer whilst the sacrifice was consuming. I say both the priest and all the rest. And Jonathan beginning and the rest answering thereunto, as Nehemiah did. And the prayer was after this manner: O Master, Master Elohim, creator of all things, who are fearful and strong and righteous and merciful, and the only and gracious King, the only giver of all things, the only just, almighty, and everlasting, thou that deliverest Israel from all trouble, and didst choose the fathers and sanctify them. Receive the sacrifice for thy whole people Israel, and preserve thine own portion and sanctify it. Gather those together that are scattered from us. Deliver them that serve among the heathen. Look upon them that are despised and abhorred, and let the heathen know that thou art our Elohim. Punish them that oppress us, and with pride do us wrong. So these Israelites are actually praying for the Most High to punish their enemies. What it tells you to do in Matthew is, to do good and love your enemies. But, do good to the people that oppress you. But right here is saying that the Israelites, they're actually praying for the Most High to punish the people that oppress them. So we can see a clear contradiction. The spirit of, First Maccabees, the Israelites are actually against their enemies, but we see in the New Testament that it's actually saying to love your enemies. Well, let's go to 2 Maccabees chapter 10, verse 24. 2 Maccabees 10, verse 24. It says, Now Timotheus, whom the Jews had overcome before, when he had gathered a great multitude of foreign forces and horses out of Asia, not a few, came as though he would take Jewry by force of arms. But when he drew near, they that were with Maccabeus turned themselves to pray unto Elohim, and sprinkled earth upon their heads, and girded their loins with sackcloth, and fell down at the foot of the altar, and besought him to be merciful to them, and to be an enemy to their enemies, and an adversary to their adversaries, as the law declared. So here it is again. The Israelites are actually praying against their enemies. They're not praying for them. And another thing that it says here is as the law declared. So what does it mean when it says as the law declared? Let's go back, and we're gonna go to Deuteronomy 20 verse 1. Let's go to Deuteronomy 20 verse 1. It says, When thou goest out to battle against thine enemies, and seest horses and chariots, and the people more than thou, be not afraid of them. For Yahuwah thy Elohim is with thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be, when ye are come nigh unto the battle, that the priest shall approach and speak unto the people, and shall say unto them, Hear, O Israel, ye approach this day unto battle against your enemies. Let not your hearts faint. Fear not, and do not tremble, neither be terrified because of them. For Yahuwah your Elohim is he that goeth with you, to fight against your enemies, to save you. So right here, you can see that the Most High was going to fight against our enemies to save us. So that's what it means when, it says he was going to be an enemy of our enemies. he was actually going to be against our enemies to help deliver us from them, when the Israelites went to battle against, their enemies, right? So let's go back, and we're going to go to Ecclesiasticus 12 verse 10. It says, "Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust hath not been altogether wiped away. Set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat, and thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therewith." So right here saying not to trust your enemies. So with that in mind, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be doing good to your enemies or loving your enemies if you're not supposed to trust them. So let's turn to 2 Samuel chapter 19 verse 1. Let's go to 2 Samuel 19 verse 1. It says, "And it was told Joab, Behold, the king weepeth and mourneth for Absalom. And the victory that day was turned into mourning unto all the people. For the people heard say that day how the king was grieved for his son." So, for a little background on this, basically, Absalom was King David's son, and he was trying to kill David to take his throne. And before he could do that, in the process of doing that, some of David's men ended up killing Absalom. And right now, David is mourning for Absalom, his son. Let's keep reading. Verse 3 says, "And the people gat them by stealth that day into the city, as people being ashamed still away, when they flee in battle. But the king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son. And Joab came into the house to the king and said, Thou hast shamed this day the faces of all thy servants, which this day have saved thy life, and the lives of thy sons and of thy daughters, and the lives of thy wives, and the lives of thy concubines, in that thou lovest thine enemies, and hatest thy friends. For thou hast declared this day that thou regardest neither princes nor servants. For this day I perceive that if Absalom had lived and all we had died this day, then it had pleased thee well." So we can see clearly that it was actually a shame to love your enemies. And even if this enemy was of your brethren, it was still a shame to love them. And that is basically the true spirit of the Israelites. They actually hated their enemies. And we also have another example of, you not supposed to be loving your enemies, even if it's another Israelite. Like in Judges 20, when, the Benjamites, they were basically committing wickedness, right? And they went to war with the Israelites, or the Israelites went to war with them. Basically, the Israelites, they didn't forgive them for what they did. They went to war, right? And the Benjamites, they basically got wiped out until there's only 600 men left. So for those of you who are trying to say that Matthew is just talking about loving the enemies of your brethren, that still does not line up with the spirit of the Most High, because we can see all throughout that the Israelites actually were against their enemies, even if they were of their brethren. So, as you can see right here, there is actually a clear, contradiction between the Old and New Testament right here on the topic of whether or not we should love our enemies. And out of common sense, why would you actually do good to someone who's trying to harm you? But this is what we see has been stated in Matthew chapter 5. So you can clearly see what that says is not lining up with the spirit of the Most High, the spirit of the Israelites, and it's not lining up with what the Israelites actually did. And this is another example of why you need to test everything that's in the New Testament with the Old Testament to see if it's the truth. Shalom.